Welcome back to the Console Xplosion Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm your host, the Historic Nerd, and let's dive right into it. We've got some interesting news about Final Fantasy 15. Apparently there's a new animated series that's launching around it, and it's kind of a way, I guess, for Square Enix to kind of boost up the anticipation for the upcoming game. The last thing I remember about a Final Fantasy movie was Spirits Within, which was such an odd film for American audiences. I'm actually quite surprised they actually produced it and pushed it forward. Because it was just one of those titles where you're just like, what the hell is going on in this film? And it's one of those things where, at the time, it was a groundbreaking achievement, considering the textures and the server farms dedicated to producing this film were just awe-inspiring. But ultimately, the story was just, I would say, too Japanese to succeed in the West, as far as the film goes. But luckily, there were some prior Final Fantasy projects that were solid anime, as in animation-based projects, that were pretty interesting. At least, I remember renting those from the video store when I was a kid, and those were actually pretty fun. So to see them kind of come back to it in an anime form is pretty interesting. But then you also had the Final Fantasy VII film that came out. That was interesting. But I'm going to be honest with you, I was never really into Final Fantasy, so it just never really drew my attention like a lot of it did for you other folks. So that's something kind of exciting for you guys to delve into. And I guess Final Fantasy 15, I'm using the Roman numerals, is going to have a release date of September 30th. And nicely enough, it's going to be on both systems, the Xbox One and PS4. So that's going to make it wide open for you folks to play, and make it not just an exclusive experience to the PlayStation, like I would have been surprised by. But thanks to Square Enix kind of branching out and being a little more open, and I would assume that's probably because a lot of money from Microsoft buying into that franchise has really inspired that. But moving on from there, kind of focusing around the Sony franchise, you have several new titles coming out for the PlayStation 4, one being a survival horror first-person shooter zombie game on the PlayStation 3, I guess, and then Sony's offering I Am Alive and Savage Moon. That's kind of fun. That should be interesting. But then, diving right back into American cinema, they actually have Alien Day that's coming out. Kind of one of the greater anniversaries of the film Alien, which was, when it came out, it existed at the same point in time as Star Wars. And probably the only reason Alien got produced was because Star Wars was in full swing. So it was a great counterculture effort to make amazing science fiction horror that I think stands the test of time to this day. Even with the special effects in that film and the way they did miniatures and models, that film is outstanding. And Ridley Scott set a benchmark in how well horror films can be put together. And some would argue that they don't like where it went with Aliens, but then again, Aliens was a fantastic action film, so it was kind of bridging the two genres together. But ultimately, that franchise was amazing for the first two. But then you had 3, and then you had Resurrection. Oh dear, okay. But then again, there might be something really interesting. There was some sketch art about, I believe, the director of District 9 coming forward and talking to Sigourney Weaver about potentially working on this project in the future. So that could be a really good film if they get that director on board with it, given how visceral and his ability to blend CGI and physical environments. It could be a fantastic story if that gets actually taken off. But then apparently there was some kind of new news about how the PlayStation 4.5 was kind of rolling out with more upgrades, things like that. And apparently individuals in charge of the Xbox One apparently aren't interested in rolling out that type of an upgrade for it. But as far as where that's going to go with the way hardware sits now, games can't get much more advanced than the hardware is. They've kind of reached that wall a little bit. So right now, they're learning how to maximize the existing hardware. So you don't have an issue where they're going to reach beyond the abilities of these systems yet. The only downside is that the Xbox One outputs at 900p versus the 1080p of the PS4. So ultimately, it's almost pointless at this point, considering the games haven't even begun to challenge the actual potential of the systems on the market. So it almost doesn't matter. And for me, I've actually sat this entire generation out because ultimately my PC still does the same things they can do, and ultimately I guess I'm not impressed with this generation of gaming. Sorry to put that out there. I mean, there are a lot of fanboys out there that apparently believe you can only play games on a console, but I personally don't care, and I've been playing games on PC since the 80s. So for me, it's not that big of a step. But to see where these consoles go and where they're ultimately pushed to their limit will be intriguing, because the nice thing about these continued console wars is they do continually encourage investment and improvement in the games that exist. So by expanding the platform that the games are produced for, you can definitely have an increased art to these games, an increased investment, and ultimately just a lot of fun depending on how well they put them together. But that was just kind of my random tangent there, but thank you for watching the Console Xplosion Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm your host, the Historic Nerd. Thanks for dropping by. And also, if you have any thoughts or want to tell me I'm stupid, please do so in the comments below. Bye.